Seen from above, a great white shark is upside down at the surface, belly to the sky. Around 5 killer whales are with it, taking turns. One moves in, holds the shark inverted, then gives way to the next. This is the Gulf of California, filmed by drone. The shark is about 2 meters long, smaller than any of the whales circling it. Then, one of the females surfaces, and the shark's liver is in her mouth. The liver is what they took. But why did the whales keep turning the shark upside down first? Almost everything people believe about orcas and great whites comes from a handful of retellings. This one is different, because there is a recording, and somebody wrote down what is on it. The footage was shot with 2 drones, flying above the water in the southwestern Gulf of California. From that height you see the whole thing at once, the shark, the whales, the shapes they make around it, and the distance between them. No boat could give you that view. From a deck you get glimpses, a fin, a splash, a dark shape that surfaces and is gone. From directly overhead, with the sun behind you and the water clear, the encounter stops being a series of glimpses and becomes a single continuous event you can watch from beginning to end. The first event was the 15th of August, 2020, at around 3 in the afternoon. A group of 5 killer whales was sighted, and the drone went up. What matters about a recording is that it has a clock. The researchers who later published this could point at a specific second and say what was happening in it. Not a memory of an encounter, recalled afterwards, a timeline, with everything in the order it occurred. 2 years later, on the 3rd of August, 2022, it happened again, in the same place. So there are 2 recorded events. Between them, 3 young white sharks were attacked, 2 in the first and 1 in the second. You will see the number 3 used for both, and it is worth keeping them straight. 2 events, 3 sharks. The description of all of it was published in the journal Frontiers in Marine Science, with the authors' names on it and the video timestamps in the text. That is an unusually solid foundation for a story like this one, which makes the next question worth asking carefully. What kind of sharks were these? About 2 meters long. That is the measurement in the paper, and it changes the picture more than any other single fact in this story. 2 meters is roughly the height of a doorway. It is a real animal with real teeth, and it is nothing like the shark most people are imagining right now. The great whites that live in the popular imagination are the big ones. 4 meters, 5, occasionally more. Those are the animals in the famous South African footage, and they are a different proposition entirely. Now put a 2-meter shark next to a killer whale. An adult orca runs somewhere between 5 and 8 meters and weighs several tons. The shark in this footage was smaller than every animal around it. Not slightly. Substantially, that size difference is not a detail. It is most of the explanation for why this encounter went the way it did, and it is the reason the researchers described these observations as novel. Because until this, the reported interactions between killer whales and white sharks involved mostly larger sharks. That is the paper's own framing of what came before. Bigger animals, bigger livers, and in some places direct competition over the same seal colonies. Young sharks were not part of that story. They are now, and the Gulf of California was not on the map for it either. And that raises something the paper flags, but does not settle: whether attacks on white sharks by killer whales represent an emerging pattern at all. The authors list it as a question for future work. 2 events do not make a trend, and they are careful about saying so. So, small sharks, in a place where nobody had recorded this before. What did the whales actually do to them? 3 minutes and 14 seconds into the video, 2 of the whales begin working on the shark. The paper names them KWM1 and KWM2. identification codes assigned from photographs because individual killer whales can be told apart by the shape of the dorsal fin and the gray saddle patch behind it. These are not anonymous animals. They have a file. Both are subadults. Not calves, not full-grown, but animals partway through the long stretch of life in which a killer whale learns what its family knows. That detail is easy to skate past, and it is worth slowing down for. The two whales doing the physical work on the shark were not the oldest animals present. Whatever this pod knows about handling a shark, these two were doing it rather than watching it being done. And here is the sentence that made this footage worth publishing. The two of them take turns to manipulate the shark by keeping it upside down. Take turns. One works, then gives way, then the other takes over. Read that again with the size difference in mind. Around 5 killer whales are present. 2 are doing the handling. The others are there. But the work is being shared between a specific pair, and it is being shared in sequence rather than all at once. At 3 minutes and 27 seconds, both of them go deeper, and the shark goes with them. What the video shows across that stretch is consistency. The same maneuver, repeated, by animals that appear to know how to do it. The researchers describe efficient handling, the whales attempting to turn the shark over and succeeding more than once. That word attempting is theirs, and it is doing real work in the sentence. It describes what the bodies did. It does not describe what was in the whales' heads. So they had the shark, and they had it in a position they kept putting it back into. The obvious question is what all of that was for. 5 minutes and 25 seconds. The adult female comes to the surface, and the 2-lobed liver of the shark is in her mouth. That is the paper's description, and it is the moment the whole encounter resolves into something you can name. They were not there to eat a shark. They were there to take one organ out of it. A shark's liver is not a small part of the animal. In a great white, it can run to a substantial fraction of the total body weight, and it is dense with oil, the energy store that keeps a shark buoyant and fueled. Sharks have no swim bladder, so that oil does double duty. It is both the fuel tank and the flotation. Pound for pound, there is very little in the ocean that pays better. Which is what makes the selection worth noticing. The whales had the whole animal available to them. What came up was the single densest package of energy in it, removed cleanly enough that the researchers could identify the organ by its 2 lobes. And then, the part that tells you this is not simply feeding. The organ is shared between the members of the pod, including calves. It gets passed around. Animals that did no handling at all end up with a piece of it. The rest of the shark is left. The researchers use the phrase highly selective feeding, and the sequence they describe is exactly that: hold the shark upside down, remove the liver, consume it, abandon the carcass. The second event, 2 years later, ends the same way. Pieces of the shark's liver tissue are visible in the mouths of the females. So we have the target, and we have the method, and both of them are on video with times attached. Which brings up a fair question about the whales themselves. Is this pod unusual? The photographs answer part of that. Because the individuals in this footage had been seen before, doing related things. The same identification work that gave KWM1 and KWM2 their codes lets researchers match them against earlier sightings. In 2018, KWM1 and KWM2 were recorded hunting monks' pygmy devil rays, a small ray that gathers in enormous numbers in the Gulf. Another whale from the group, KWM3, was observed on bull sharks between 2022 and 2023. Rays, bull sharks. And now, these young white sharks. 3 different animals, each a different problem to solve, and the same handful of whales turning up each time. The paper's reading is that this group exhibits hunting techniques adapted to the type of elasmobranch they intend to consume. Elasmobranch is the umbrella term for sharks and rays, a pod that appears to have a method for each one. That is the strongest version of the story. But the paper does not let it stand unqualified, and neither should we, because no photographic identification images were taken of the killer whales in the second report. The animals in the 2022 event were never matched to the 2020 ones. Whether they were the same whales is, in the author's own words, unknown. It is a small line in a long paper, and it puts a limit on how far the specialization story can be pushed. One documented pod, one confirmed set of individuals, and a second event that may or may not involve them. Still, the pattern across the identified animals is real. Which leaves the question this whole video started with: why turn the shark over? There is an answer everybody reaches for. But one detail in the recording makes that explanation much harder to prove. The answer everybody reaches for is tonic immobility. It is a real phenomenon, and it is genuinely strange. Turn certain sharks upside down and they stop. The body goes still, breathing slows, and the animal stays that way for a period before it recovers. Researchers use it deliberately. A shark held in that state can be measured, tagged, or have a hook removed with far less risk to everyone involved. So the story writes itself. The whales flip the shark switches off, and the liver comes out without a fight. Now here is what the paper actually says. It says the maneuvering is likely to induce tonic immobility. Elsewhere it says the whales are possibly inducing tonic immobility, potentially to avoid bites. Likely, possibly, potentially, 3 hedges, and not one sentence in which the authors state that tonic immobility happened. That distinction survives poorly outside the paper. Headlines covering this research said the orcas paralyzed the sharks. That word is not in the author's claim. And the gap between likely to induce and a flat statement that it happened is the gap between a proposal and a finding. There is a second layer to this that gets even less attention. The function of tonic immobility in sharks is not understood. It has been suggested as an anti-predator response. It has also been suggested as something that occurs during mating. Nobody has established what it is for, which means nobody can say with confidence what it does under attack. And there is a third gap, the largest of them. Nothing in this research establishes that the whales know any of this. That inverting a shark produces immobility is a thing humans have measured. Whether the whales are exploiting that, or whether holding a shark upside down is simply an effective way to hold a shark, is not something a drone can see. So the popular explanation is a proposal that the researchers offered carefully and the internet adopted as fact. And underneath all of that sits the detail I mentioned earlier. One line in the description of the first event, easy to read past, that puts the whole explanation on much weaker ground than it looks. The detail is a timestamp. The paper walks through the first event second by second, and the order it gives is not the order this story is usually told in. At 7 seconds, a whale pushes the shark toward the surface, and the shark turns and avoids being hit. At 25 seconds, another whale pushes it up from underneath, and at that moment, the paper says, the juvenile shark is already bleeding, already 25 seconds in. At 49 seconds, a subadult female tries to grip it, and the shark performs what the authors name as an evasion technique: tail slapping. So at 49 seconds, it is bleeding and still fighting, both at once. Then a gap. The next moment the paper describes is 3 minutes and 14 seconds. The 2 subadults, taking turns, holding it upside down. That is the order. Evasion, blood, more evasion, and only then the inversion. The story everyone tells is one clean move. Flip the shark goes still. Take the liver. What the paper documents is an animal injured within half a minute and still tail-slapping 24 seconds after that. And here is what the paper does not say. It never states whether the shark was still alive at 3 minutes and 14 seconds when the whales held it inverted. It does not say it was. It does not say it was not. That gap is the problem. Tonic immobility is a response of a living animal. We know the shark was responsive at 49 seconds. We do not know what it was 2.5 minutes later, when the behavior everyone points to happened. Be careful, because it cuts both ways. The evasion does not disprove the hypothesis. A shark can fight early and be immobilized later, and the author's reading may be right. But it does not support it either. It establishes only that the animal was active before the part of the encounter the explanation is about. None of this is a flaw in the research. The footage did not show the shark's condition during the handling, and the authors did not speculate past what they could see. The flaw is downstream, in every retelling that skips the blood at 25 seconds and the tail slap at 49, and jumps straight to a shark that switches off. So, what is the honest answer? Here is the whole of it. Documented 2 events in 2020 and 2022 in the Gulf of California. Around 5 killer whales each time. Sharks of about 2 meters. 2 identified subadults taking turns holding one of them upside down. A liver removed and shared with the pod, including calves. The rest left behind, supported, but not proven, that the handling was deliberate and practiced. The footage shows repetition and efficiency across 2 years, which is not nothing, but it is also not a controlled test of anything. A hypothesis, tonic immobility, offered by the authors with 3 separate hedges and reported by everyone else without them. Unknown, whether the shark was alive when it was turned, whether the whales understand what inverting a shark does, whether any of this is spreading. The flip is documented. The paralysis is a hypothesis. What the whales understand about either is nobody's finding.